I glanced over again at this supposedly guy, and it was at that point that I realized that this might not be a guy at that point because of how big he was. And it was at that point he caught me in his peripheral, and he looked over at me and looked back towards those deer and snapped his head right back at me. Like he couldn't believe I was standing there. And it crossed my mind at that point that it's a Sasquatch, that it's unmistakable, 35 yards away.
Welcome back to the Cryptic Creature Show. This is Brian, and with me as always, my co-host Todd. What's up, buddy?
Brian, my friend, are you ready for an amazing encounter tonight?
Ready.
We have Ernie coming on, and Ernie had quite the Bigfoot encounter. He actually had interaction with a couple Bigfoot, and he saw them doing their kind of crazy talking chatter to each other. So I can't wait to get Ernie on and talk to him. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I know. Can't wait to hear it.
You ready?
Yep, let's get him. How you doing, Ernie?
Not too bad. Hanging in there.
Thanks for being here with us tonight, Ernie.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a while. We've been trying to get together, but we finally made it happen, so we're glad to have you here.
Yes,
yep,
we are.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we know that you had quite the amazing encounter. What state did this happen in?
Massachusetts.
Okay. And what year did this happen in?
Around 1987, I believe.
You want to take us into it and tell us the encounter and everything, and then
yeah, sure. Yeah. I used to do a lot of hunting by myself, and the area that I had chosen to go into where I had my encounter was kind of steep in history around there with some stories of strange things happening, but I liked that because that meant that nobody else was going to be in there. You know, there's just going to be me hunting in that area, and it upped my chances of harvesting a deer. So that was in the Cobble Mountain region of Massachusetts. That's in between basically Westfield, Mass, and Granville. And on the opposite side of Cobble Mountain Reservoir, I used to own a store in Blandford. So I chose to hunt just maybe a half a mile from the reservoir on Drake Mountain. And I knew that area very well from hunting it before and taking a lot of notes in there, you know, on a topographical map. So I had gone in fairly early that morning, last day of hunting season in Mass, which is shotgun season there. And I had gained access by parking across the street from Drake Mountain and going in on an old fire road, and then going up around the side of the mountain on it's like an old farmer's trail, I guess you'd call it, that they would use to go up there with a tractor or take some trees or whatever they're doing. It's actually known as Unkemit's Path now. A lot of people didn't know it back then. It has a lot of history to it. But I had scouted that area a couple of days prior to that and got a weather report on which way the wind was going to be blowing. And as I came around and parked my car and started headed up, I knew that it would be blowing down towards me. On the opposite side of the mountain, there was an apple orchard. So that's what I was concerned about. If it had been blowing that way, I would have gone in on that side. That would have never happened to me that day. So anyways, I had figured where the deer were going to be bedding down on just about on top of the mountain there, Drake Mountain. And as I got closer to it, I was taking my time trying to stalk. I call it stalking my way in, you know, stop, go. And I jumped the deer right at the knoll, little knoll alongside that path. There was a couple of boulders that were probably 30, 40 feet tall. It reminded me of Stonehenge. in a way, the way they were formed right on that corner there. And I jumped them, and I decided what I was going to do, because that path dog-legged its way up and then around a dog-leg back down the other side of Drake Mountain. And Drake Brook came out at the top of that mountain, right up where the peak of it right there. So anyways, I decided what I was going to do is I was going to try to get out in front of the deer. And I knew they were following the ridge line right across the top. And if I got there, then that would be fantastic. If I didn't get there, then, you know, no harm unless I didn't try. So I started trying to get out in front of them, and I could hear them. I couldn't see them because they're just on a little on the other side of that knoll. And as they moved, I moved, and I was able to step into spots that didn't have any frost on them. There's a lot of rocks up there to walk on, and it seemed a lot of them were pretty clear. It wasn't really that bad that morning. You could see your breath, but it wasn't that bad. Anyways, I knew that they would be coming through an area where there was a stone wall that went from my point, the path I was on, to where it dog-legged back around the top of the mountain. And that's where the brook was, right there. And my objective was to get around the front of it. There was a set of old pines there. They were huge, but it wasn't all a tangly mess in there. And then there was a stone wall and a bunch of saplings, beech nuts. And I managed to get there. But right as I got there, right on the almost on the point of it, on that turn, I was watching in my peripheral to make sure that there wasn't anything there that was going to scare them, that they would double back or head off the other side of that ridge. And I didn't see anything at that point. I didn't notice any movement. I didn't see anything, which was, when I look back on it, it's kind of disturbing in a way, because I know there was a tiny knoll, and then what you call like a dried up vernal pool, so it had ferns in it. I could still hear the deer coming, so I brought my shotgun up, and I was waiting for them to come up through those trees, those saplings, and over that stone wall. I was going to take a deer, and I noticed movement on my left-hand side at my 9 o'clock, just in my peripheral vision, about 35 yards out, and there was something laying next to a tree, and I immediately, pointed my shotgun at it, figuring it was probably a buck, because a lot of the bucks aren't really traveling with these deer, particularly the does. They'll chase them off. And it started getting up a little bit more. You can't shoot a deer on the ground in mass if it's supposedly sleeping, So it started getting up a little bit more, and I thought it was a bear at that point. But I'm still trying to remain cognizant of those deer coming through those saplings, because I want a deer, but I don't want a bear because I don't have a bear permit. I don't want this thing to bum rush me. So I'm watching it as it scooches up closer to the tree, and now I can see that it's not a bear, that it appears to be a man there with his head on the other side of that tree. So I immediately started focusing more on those deer again, but I knew that I probably wasn't in his peripheral. He had his head around the other side of the tree. If them deer came over the stone wall between the two of us, a good chance, high chance that I was going to get shot. There's a lot of guys that go out in Massachusetts use buckshot, double odd buck. So I decided to just move up a little bit. I was kind of squatted down, so I decided to move up just a little bit. So if they came over, that he would catch me out of his peripheral. As soon as he brought his head around, if he had to take a shot, he'd catch me in a peripheral there. It was about that point he started standing up even more, this guy, and he was hugging a tree, but his head is still around the other side of the tree. And I looked over again, and I'm saying, my God, that's a big guy. It's a big guy. And all hell broke loose in those saplings. It sounded like boulders being tossed. branches cracking, and I glanced over again at this supposedly guy, and it was at that point that I realized that this might not be a guy at that point because of how big he was. Even though he had his head on the other side of the tree, I was looking at that tree to see if I could find a little twig on it or a piece of moss on it or something to measure this guy, because he was hugging that tree. And I found a little piece of moss on it, which will come into play in a little while here. It was at that point, with the knockdown drag out going on over there, that he or it stepped around, swung. He had his right arm on the tree, which was on my side, and he swung his right leg around, and he started to come around, and he stuck his head around my side of the tree. He was watching right over there in the saplings, and it was at that point he caught me in his peripheral, and he looked over at me and looked back towards those deer and snapped his head right back at me, like he couldn't believe I was standing there. He was totally amazed. He was shocked that I was standing there, as I was shocked because now I knew definitely what it was that was standing there. I had never seen one. I'd seen the Patty film. I never figured I would ever see one. I was hoping that I would see one someday, but it never crossed my mind. I was in there hunting. I was in there to harvest myself a deer. And it crossed my mind at that point that it's a Sasquatch, that it's unmistakable, 35 yards away. He turned broadside to me, and I said to myself, I've got to try to take in as much information as I possibly can looking at this thing, because if somebody asks me, I can say, hey, I saw a Sasquatch. But then he did something. He was completely facing me, and he put both his hands level with his chest, elbows bent, and pumped them at me like whoa, like wait a minute. And my head was spinning. I had the 12 gauge on him at that point because I didn't know what was going to happen. Now I'm swimming in my own thoughts that it's one thing seeing a Sasquatch. Now this thing is doing this. I never heard of anything like this, and I've never heard of anything like this in the 36 plus years that this has happened to me. I've never heard of anybody, and I completely shut down, shut up, and I never would speak a word to anybody. I just waited. I was praying that somebody would come out and say that this happened to them. He continued to walk towards me. And as he walked towards me, he took his right hand, pointer finger from his right hand, pointed it directly at my chest. At that point, he was probably about, I'd say, pretty close to halfway to me, and pointed it towards the middle of my chest, right where my heart is, and he pointed towards himself, his own chest. And any guy will recognize that. If you walk into a bar and you want to start a fight with somebody, you just go over and just say, hey, I'm pointing towards you first, and then go like that to somebody, and things don't usually go well. He was, it bothered me because I didn't realize it until a long time afterwards that he knew how to approach me. And he did something else. He took his hands, elbows bent, about waist level, palms down to the ground. And then he turned his hands up. Again, I'm just thinking that, I was concerned. I wasn't scared. I was concerned. I had checked my breath, make sure I wasn't dreaming. Checked my wristwatch. I remember a passenger plane, 727, flying over, going towards Bradley International Airport. And I'm thinking that I need to remember everything he does, because the way he's moving towards me doesn't seem threatening. So I lowered my shotgun. I had a 9mm on me, but I lowered my shotgun, and I figured I'm pretty close now. And then me trying to keep my wits about me, thinking I'm going to have to repeat some of this, um, he did something else. He took his right pointer finger and pointed over my left shoulder and pointed over my right shoulder and continued walking over to me. At that point, I could see his eyes. He had blue eyes. I could see everything about him, the length of his hair. I could tell that his hair, even though it appeared to be black at a bit of a distance, there are people that their hair is really dark brown. It's not black. It's dark brown. His skin tone was, I wouldn't say black. I'd say, again, like, I have no other words for it but to say, if you've seen some people, Jamaicans or whatever, there's some of their skin tone there can be very, very dark. That was his skin tone. He had blue eyes. Maybe one encounter in all these years where they described him as having blue eyes. At that point, he was about, and I know how ridiculous this may sound to some people, but he's about 5 feet from me. And he stuck his palm out, his hand out. And he took, again, his finger and his palm up. And I had to look down at his palm. He pointed to his palm, like he wanted me to look at his palm. And I immediately picked my head back up because I just don't, I don't know what he was really trying to do. And he looked at me and nodded his head and pointed at his palm again. This time he pointed hard at his palm, and I looked down at his palm. His palm was the same as ours, except for one fact. He didn't have a lifeline. His hands were clean. His nails were clean. The hair on him was clean. Where you have hair on your hands, they have hair on their hands the same exact spots, except longer, like 4 or 5 inches, maybe in some spots 6 inches on them. This thing was amazingly beefed up. He was cut up. I fought. I used to fight, and I've never seen even the biggest wrestlers out there look anything like this. This thing could easily just grab like an Andre the Giant and just pull his arm off or throw him someplace. I mean, I just never seen anything that big before. But standing next to him, I was just a little bit below his shoulder. After that, he nodded at me again, and he turned towards the saplings, which was about a quarter turn away from me. And he made 3 whoop noises, about a second and a half apart. But he had pulled both his hands up, cupped his hands around his mouth, and did those whoop noises, amazingly loud. You go to the zoo and listen to a lion, you can feel that bass that's in there. And if that wasn't enough, he whistled. Again, looking at those saplings in there, I guess he could see what I couldn't see. I had a gut feeling that there was way more than one in there. I'm glad I didn't shoot him. I'm glad that nothing really did happen, because I don't think I'd ever made it out of there. But he whistled, and then he made a arm gesture with his right arm, which is basically almost facing me. I was at that time on his right hand side, and he was like, "Come on!" And he pointed towards the area that he just came from, only out further. You could see he was pointing out further than that. He turned one last time towards me, nodded his head towards me, and he didn't run, he didn't trot, he didn't jog, just as smooth as silk. He walked away like somebody, like if you see parkour runners, how smooth they are in their motions. That was him. He just went off that way, and he stopped probably beyond the point that he originally started, another, I'm going to say like 40 yards, maybe 40 yards tops. And at the point he stopped, he turned towards those trees, those where that knockdown drag out was going on. And I heard this. I knew it was one. I heard it coming through those saplings like a train wreck. And as soon as it cleared those saplings, it had to cross that dog leg path, and then there was a brook, and then it had to run over to him. And I'd say that sprint would have been at that angle 100 yards easy. And I've shot deer on the run, and that would have been a difficult shot. It stopped, met up with the other one. The other one was almost facing me, and they started doing this chatter. I seen them do it. I seen them whistle. I seen them whoop. I seen them do this chatter thing. And I think if it would have been guys at that distance, I would have never heard them talking if they were talking to each other. It just a weird noise, but low. And he pointed towards me. And the other one had to stoop down. The other one was a cinnamon colored, and it had to stoop down just a little bit. It was just over his shoulders. So it probably would have put that one at about 6'5", I figure. Somewhere's around there, or 6'8", even. Yeah, probably 6'8". And he stooped down to look underneath this branch. It was on one of them little saplings, and he did a double take on me. These things couldn't believe that I was there. I couldn't believe that one was there. To see the other one is, I guess I'm lucky to see the second one. And then the big one did something else. He pointed towards the other one's chest and pointed it for it to go that way, which would have brought it on an arc around me. And he pointed towards his own chest and did the same thing in the opposite direction, like he was going to go on an arc around me, and they both took off. And at that point, I said, well, I'd say prior to that point, I really wanted to track them. I wanted to see where they were going. I was, curious, probably a little stupid too, but curious. Where are you going? You going in a cave or what? So they proceeded to do this so-called flanking maneuver, which made me very nervous. But I knew I had to go over and measure the tree. I wanted to know how tall this thing was. I wanted as much evidence I possibly could put in my head, just in case this day ever came. And it's here. And people, maybe they're finally coming to light around that these things can communicate. I know the area that I was in is very steep in sightings and some other things that went on there. I know Matt. I'll probably be talking to Matt about this for one of his shows there. But I went over to the tree, and I found the mark on the tree, a little piece of moss, and I measured it, and it was 7'8" And because I stood next to the tree, put my hand up there, and then stepped back a little bit and measured up with my fingers from there. I said, my God, I said, I got a runt. I said, this has got to be a runt. I said, I thought that Bigfoots were really, really, really huge. Like this one wasn't big enough, I said, man, I think it would have been better to put that in a story, but I can't do that. It was 7'8" tall. And then where it went through that vernal pool, I believe that it crawled up to that tree because it was a little dip in the landscape there. And I could see when it went through there, that it patted down some of the ferns that were in there. So I decided, well, I'm a butcher by trade. I got to try to figure out, is this mark on the tree telling me the truth here, So I seen where the ferns are patted down, so I tried to take a big step and land on it, No, it wasn't going to happen. So I decided to take a bit of a jump on it. I fell short again, so I tried to take a little running start, and I still fell short on it. So I knew at that point, not much short, but I mean, I was a lot more spry when that happened. I could still maneuver my body pretty good, but it was pretty much set in my mind that indeed, what's its height? 7'8". tall, give or take a half an inch. And I guesstimated its weight to be up around 500 pounds. Some people told me that, it was probably 600, but I used to fight. And I can tell you, there's guys that you get a 400-pound man, that's big. You get somebody that's hugely, rocking in shape, really cut up at 500 pounds. Yeah, that's amazing. To me, that was amazing. But that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's steep in history there, and other people over the years, past couple of years, I've contacted from that area, and they've told me stories of their family members who are no longer living. That actually, one gentleman, he actually was traveling to Bradley International Airport every night to go there to work, and it crossed the road right exactly where I used to park my car. It came down off of Drake Mountain right there. And there's another guy that had a similar story. He's passed also, that he was there hunting. I don't know the exact time, what year it was. And supposedly he told the story to somebody else, and it was almost identical to mine. This thing knew how to approach me and definitely knew how to communicate. And that was I think that's what a lot of people, maybe it's too bizarre for them to comprehend, but I would wish that they, instead of going out and banging on trees and whooping, what's your next move? It should be a Jane Goodall move. Let's face it, she only heard that those gorillas were up in that mountain area. But she went in there and she took the next step. The next move was to communicate. I believe that's where this should go. People ask me, well, are there bad ones, or they want to base my experience on a bad experience? Well, there's good and bad in everybody, everything. There's, could change, but you have to understand that the nature of whatever it is, you could have made something mad at you, and maybe it'll bite you, or give you a horn or whatever. Even a deer will attack you, under the right circumstances. So, and after that, I never went back in the woods until I met my wife. We used to go snowmobiling, and that kind of brought me back out there. But to take a walk in there by myself, I wasn't so sure that at that point that there's all good ones or all bad ones in there, so I would go in well armed and not very far. Let's face it, that flanking maneuver, I don't know why they did it. For the longest time, I didn't know why it used the hand signals that it used, but the voyeurs, that's how they were able to travel around from different nations to nations with the Indians, because they didn't speak all them languages. They had to use sign language, and so didn't the Indians use sign language. So why not them? I'm pretty sure that it probably had seen humans before, and probably it knew what the gun was. That's for sure. And it probably figured that I didn't know its language. I have no idea if it could speak English, but it chose sign language. And I think that was probably a wise decision. Otherwise, I probably would have shot it. It started talking to me. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions on that?
Yeah, I just don't know where to start. That's an amazing encounter. I'm just, wow. Ernie.
Yeah, no kidding. That's wild.
Start anywhere you want.
Let me say first, I was, we had talked before prior to getting on the show, and I kind of knew a little bit about the story. And you had said that, you wanted to get out of there because you felt in fear.
Yeah.
But now that you've kind of walked us through it the full way, and we've heard it. I think, honestly, hear me out. I think this thing had seen hunters before. I think he knew you were hunting. He was hunting as well. He wanted you to shoot him a deer. He wanted you to shoot and kill him a deer. That's why he was doing this. He knew to say, "Hey, whoa, wait a minute." So I think they knew what you were doing, and I think the reason they took off and they were pointing at you, and then they took off, was because I think they were going to try to drive a deer your way in hopes that you would shoot it for them. They didn't have to run it down, and they could take it. I think that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, you know what that's a pretty good analogy of it, because when he put his palms down, I understood it to mean he had no food. And when he put his palms up, he was asking for food. I did relay that back to him. That was at the point when I relayed back the finger pointing to his chest, my chest, and the no food, not one food, but the no food, and then over his shoulders, I pointed back to him. So that could be an absolute truth, because they were hunting the same deer as me, but I never seen any deer running in any direction or heard anything else going in any other direction. So I thought that they actually got a deer, and I was feeling like if I go over there, maybe what they're going to try to do is stop me from taking their harvest. Also, like you say, they could have been figuring they were going to be pushing deer towards me, because what I heard coming up the side of that mountain alongside those deer or beside those deer was something on the other side of those deer. I always just figured it was just a lone deer, just paralleling them coming up from the back. Because I've seen does push other deer, get behind them and drive them up like that. So I washed it off. There's been plenty of things that I used to wash off that would happen around me ever since I was a kid out hunting, including on Drake Mountain, where tracks were brushed out and there was a hole punched in the ice. But I just figured those are people doing that. That's not these things. I mean, up until me, not bragging, but up until me, people used to be on these forums and they would say, "Oh, they don't get in trees." The hell they don't. They do get in the trees. They can get in the damn tree. And if they had to break every branch off and shimmy up it, I think they could. I've got a tree in my backyard. I bet you I could pick a car up off the ground, winch it off the ground. It's so big. The branches, I think it might be an oak tree. I'm pretty sure. They have them up here in Ohio. They're just absolutely huge trees, or meat eaters. Nobody believed that they're meat eaters. They certainly are meat eaters. You're not going to get that big eating grass and mushrooms, I don't think.
No. I think their diet's just like ours. It's,
I'm 100% positive of that, plus a few more things in their diet. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. If you were hungry enough, you would eat them. You would eat it. I think they, like some animals, can eat things that are a little, how shall we say, beyond their fresh date, that they've expired.
Right? Yeah.
I've heard stories of going dumpster diving. Generally, even a hobo will be picky on there.
Yeah, we've heard that about them too. Actually,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. One of the most, I guess, the two most driving instincts that we have is hunger and thirst, and if someone gets super super hungry, they're about to do anything.
That's
so
right.
So those guys might have been like, "Hey man, can you help us out here? We're trying to catch these deer. We can't."
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we've heard this before where they've stolen hunters. People. I think it was one of our very first episodes that we had a guy named Mike on. He was hunting in Maine. I'm sorry, Maine, and he shot a deer, and sure enough, a Bigfoot come running along, and deer was gone. Took his deer.
I've heard of that.
Carried it off.
Yeah, we were My wife and I were at a powwow. I think it was down in Georgia, and I took advantage of the fact is because if you usually see the Indian police there, you know it's a legit powwow going on. There's things that they don't allow on there unless everything's going to be made by hand with real things, not plastic or anything like that. And I noticed they call her a storyteller, okay, or the medicine woman. And I was talking to the Indian police, and they went over and got her. And she came over to me and started talking to me about what I was saying to them. And she said, I think there's somebody here that you might want to speak with. And I said, okay. I figured we're going to go one step up from her. I'm going to be speaking with a shaman or something out back here. And it turned out that they led me through the tent area. And this guy's name is Chief Ernest. You should look him up. Yeah, he is the great grandson of, I think, Sitting Bull. Okay, and he's still living to this day.
Cool.
And I sat down with him, and he started asking me questions about this. And one of the crazy questions he asked me was there any water around? And there was Drake Brook, and there was two reservoirs, the Granville Reservoir and the Cobble Mountain Reservoir. He said, did you notice anything strange about your surroundings? Like maybe things were just a little bit different, maybe like grayish colored. I can't explain it quite. Like out of time. How about that? Out of time. And I thought it was a strange question, and I had to really think about that for years and years and years, if there was. And he also asked me, what was I thinking? And my wife asked me that too. And that's a question I asked every single eyewitness I talked to. Where was your mind? What was your frame of mind? And my frame of mind at the moment was to become one with the deer, to get out in front of them, to actually sound like a deer walking. You can actually two-step and make yourself sound like a four-legged animal. And that was my only hope, to get out there in front of them to try to duplicate that. Obviously, I was able to do that. So now, did that have anything to do with it? I don't know. I don't like to put the woo in there until we first of all figure out what's wrong with a flat tire. Take the tire, put a new one on, and go fix that tire. Find out what made it flat. Until we find out what this is and what it can do, then I just sort of kind of leave the woo out of there. This is what happened, and they didn't go trotting off through a portal. I'm not saying it's not true. It possibly is. I tell everybody that if you told me that right now you live next door to me and you came run over and said, hey, there's a pterodactyl in my backyard and he's drinking the water out of my pool, I'm running over there. I'm going to believe you. Because after what I see, I can't call anybody crazy. After speaking with Matt, okay, I often thought about it, about the dog man thing. And I said, well, it possibly could be, but that's my stand is I can't say it's not. But I only heard half of his story, and I immediately watched the rest of the story because I get in late sometimes from work to watch a lot of these things. And I immediately got his phone number and called him up on the phone. I had to talk to him. And then him and I met up, and I said, there's very few of us. And once we've been touched, there's something else that goes on too, and it's just been crazy because this story here, I think that a lot of people want that, the money value out there, and there's a lot of the hoaxers and, everything else out there. And to come out with this, it takes the shine off of them when I wish that they would look at it and Jane Goodall this. You're going out there unprepared in the woods. We wouldn't be able to survive a night in the woods You wouldn't know where to set up a camp if you could set up a camp, and or what to watch out for. Watch out for snakes. You're looking around for something, that's very evasive. Always takes the high ground on you. That knows that you're there. Can out hear you. Can out see you. Can out jump you. Out swim you. Outrun you. What more do you need? I mean, I've seen moose literally look like they disappeared, and they didn't run that far into the woods because you just don't suspect on how they can do something like that. So a lot of the people out there, they need to put it together and start learning how to really camp out and go and do. And there's a couple of them out there, and I'm a little bit scared for them, but that's them. You're not going to deter them. They're going to go out and they're going to look. And I'm sure if they listen to what I've said, if they do come across one and it is facing them, and perhaps maybe it is angry at them, that they can just say, "Hey, ooh, hold on a minute," or you can say to them, "Hold on a minute," tell them that you're brothers, and maybe that might get a little dialogue going there. So maybe you can sit down and eat a raw fish, or I don't know, something.
Share some sushi with Sasquatch. Is that what you're saying there, Ernie?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was cool when you told me that you noticed he didn't have a lifeline in their hands.
No lifeline.
Yeah, what do you think that means?
I wonder if primates do. Do primates have lifelines? Do they show lifelines?
They don't even have the same markings on their palms.
No, okay.
I don't believe it as we do. I was told by somebody that there are people out there that don't have a lifeline, and that's possibly true, But then you made the point, Todd, that perhaps he wanted me to stay there, and I've heard that before. Maybe he wanted me to stay there while they, flush some deer towards me.
Yeah, like work together. Hey, let's work
Maybe.
together.
That's why he touched the phone. Like, stand right here.
You got the bait stick. We'll send them your way.
Yeah.
You bang them.
I wasn't.
And then we'll take them and leave.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't going to.
I was going to say, you shoot him, we'll take him and leave.
I really did want to track him. I really did want to follow him until he went and did that, and they started doing the planking thing. I thought for sure that, I was sneaky enough that I would be able to see where they were going, Then I would have this really fantastic thing to talk about, or I wouldn't be here. I'd be on Mission 411.
Yeah. Right.
I would
be talking
Dave,
about you, not with you, maybe, huh?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the thing that, and how he was doing this with like, whoa. I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
They've had communication with humans before. What can you tell me about? I want you to describe the face of the creatures, but can you tell me about, before we get too far, but can you tell me about the talking, the chattering to each other? Did it sound like the Sierra sounds? Have you ever heard those before? Were they actually having a dialogue kind of thing going on there?
Yeah, Todd, is what had happened was I started searching for somebody to talk to on the internet. It was very hard to do back then. I don't know a lot about computers even today, as long as it's been. And I came across the Sierra sounds, and I got to tell you, the second I heard them Sierra sounds, I just about jumped out of my chair. I just wanted to scream like, "You don't know what you have. You have no freaking idea what you just recorded. You are making an assumption, a really good assumption, that what you recorded." That was them. That's what they sound like. I used to be able to do it. My wife asked me one time. A lot of people think that they recognize some words. I can throw it out there, and people can think whatever they want. They definitely have their own language. Absolutely, for sure on that. Like I said, when I heard that, I just wanted to scream out loud. I just wanted somebody to hear that. And back then, nobody had ever seen one whistle, whoop, or even that, what they call samurai chatter. That's exactly what it sounded like. And a dialogue. They had a dialogue going on. Particularly when that cinnamon-colored one showed up, they had a little chit chat there, not very long, and then he gave me up. He threw me under the bus.
I mean, let's face it, they're a tribe of people. They walk on two legs like us, they have two arms like us, they have a face, eyes, nose,
Yeah,
mouth like us. They talk, they have a language like us.
yeah,
They're hairy like some of us. And,
yeah.
so they really are. They're just not as an advanced people that we are, but yet they're the greatest survivalists out there. You're right. We could not go in the woods and survive like those things could. We have to build shelters and houses and stuff like that. They're suited for that. They're suited for this earth. They don't need to do
Yeah.
anything. They
We're
just
not made. We're not made for that. Some people think that they say, "Well, do you think that they use weapons?" They don't need a weapon. They can run a deer down. They can run a deer down and grab it and slam it into a tree if they want to. Just run right off with it. Do whatever they want. That's how fast they are. That's how strong they are. Extremely agile. People. I hear people say, "Well, it chased me out of the woods, but I beat it back to my car." No, you didn't. No,
Yeah, it let
no,
you it let you
yeah,
go.
yeah. It could have tore the car door off your car and beat you with
Right.
it.
Well, Ernie, can you tell us about the face of these creatures? Can you give us a good
Yeah,
description of what you saw?
yeah, absolutely. This was very, I'll say, human looking, like a cross between Native American, a Neanderthal, and African American. He had the brow ridge, the hair on the face only went up to right about here on him. Didn't go up real high. This was all bare on the face area. But again, because of the skin tone and the hair, if you were at a distance, let's say 50 yards, and I'll just say 50 yards, it didn't matter what the light conditions are because it matches the hair so well. You can't tell how high up that goes on their face. The chest, the same way. Like I said, wherever you have hair, they have hair, just more of it. It had the brow ridge going on, but it was very leaning more towards the Neanderthal side. Like, if you ever seen a picture of Solo Man, then you could probably overlay that. I know that some people they don't understand what uncanny valley is, but if you've been trained to observe and trained to control your emotions, like in fight or flight, you want to be in. You particularly develop that in martial arts or any type of pugilistic sports, where even in football, you've got to face off against somebody. You better get over that fear real quick, or you're going to get hammered. And I was taking in a lot of information on this. I like to call him a guy. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of an extremely big guy, and the skin was the same color on his hands except his palms. If you can imagine that, it'd be the same as African American. Their palms, their skin tone isn't the same all the way through on their palms, on the bottoms of their feet. We get a tan. We don't get it on our palms, really. It's different color than and the bottoms of our feet, different color. I believe that on the bottoms of their feet, it's more like pads than anything else to support that weight and to be able for them to be able to move the way that they do move, for things to not really bother them or to be that quiet. I've read stories on big game hunters that elephants are capable of walking through your camp right by your tent and you can't hear them. And it's all because of that, how they place their foot and the pads on the bottom of their feet. I think that's a good possibility. There's a lot of things out there.
Did you notice any kind of smell or anything when he was that close to you?
Absolutely, absolutely not. Absolutely no smell whatsoever. This thing looked, and I know another guy that has had an encounter, close encounter, and he's said the same thing I'm going to say. It looks groomed. it kind of looked groomed. I don't know if it went down and could maybe to get the stench off of it so it could hunt like that, because it was on a pinch point. I believe it was on a pinch point and it was waiting for them other ones in case any of them got away from however many there were on the other side of that stone wall. It was going to run them down. That's what I think was going on there. And to see me there was like totally like, how the hell did you get here? I mean, I was downwind. That I knew I was downwind from him, but I was also in the open. But he had his head around the other side of the tree, and that was a silly maneuver, in my opinion, because you want to be in a position where you don't have any obstruction to your right, so that you can come around the right hand side, or if something runs that way, you can go that way. Never knew I was standing there. He was totally shocked by it,
Yeah, that's a couple interesting facts to your encounter. Normally, the Bigfoot surprises the human, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And nobody ever sees them do what you saw them do or act like you saw them act.
Never.
I mean, that's crazy.
I've never heard.
No,
I've
that's
never
awesome.
heard it. Never ever heard it. Not even one single time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waiting. And perhaps there are people out there. More than likely, there are. But
I would say there probably are. They just are afraid to say anything because they think people won't believe them.
Well, not only that, but look at some of these groups. They're going to be made fun of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why.
There's a lot of that too. Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm here. That's why I decided to come forward and make a stand, no matter what, is to give them that confidence to step forward. Because it's for me. I want to hear that too. I want to compare. Did it do anything with its hands? I want to know, because it's imperative that we do know this. Because if they can communicate, let's communicate.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Exactly, but these people aren't going to come forward if they keep getting beat up in some of these forums and stuff. That's not going to happen. So,
I think they did communicate with the Indians a lot, and I think that they saw
you're right, Todd.
The white man come in and destroying things, and they said, "Nah, we're backing off."
They actually did, Todd. I've got a lot of friends who are Native American. And they practice their traditions. I don't practice my traditions, but they practice their traditions. And they have stories about trading with them, and the Mohawk being one of them. And this comes from my buddy. He said, "Well, we have no verbal history on why we broke relations with them." So we talked about it. I think that the reason why they broke relations is because these things are highly spiritual too. Highly spiritual, and that's what they're attracted to. You'll find that the majority of eyewitnesses had one thing in common, was their frame of mind. You look at the Kerry Arnold. I don't know if you remember Kerry Arnold at all. His frame of mind when he sat down next to that tree. Why was he always going there? It was his frame of mind. It was a peaceful place. It was a peaceful place for me, and every single one of the eyewitnesses that had close encounters had the same frame of mind. And perhaps that is exactly what they had with the Native Americans. And what we did, or what the white man did, was decided that we wanted money and guns and furs, and we started war. And once we started war, they didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want anything to do with us. They wanted us to stay away. And that was the end of all of it, right there.
That sounds about right to me.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, I think.
It could be. I mean, they never spoke about it. My great uncle, he was Native American, and I remember hunting with him and my father. And I don't remember where the heck we were. He was a guide in Maine at one time, and it was him, my father, myself, and my brother. And we were told to take the fire road. We were way the heck out in the woods. You always would find fire roads out there. And we had walkie-talkies, and then if anything happened, to click it to get their attention, and then we'll meet back up where we started from. And we were told that if we seen anything strange, weird, they would say that to us, to immediately click it and go back. Well, we did. We came across barefoot tracks in the snow, but we didn't think much of it. I mean, you're 9, 10 years old. You got a You're allowed to use a shotgun. Okay, you're up there, you're going to get yourself a big deer. And you come across some tracks, and the first thing that comes across your mind is, hey, is my great uncle playing a trick on me? Is my father playing a trick on me? What the hell's going on here? Or is there a naked dude running around the woods out here? So we went back, we were told to stay there while they went and checked it out. They went and checked it out, and they came back, and my great uncle talking in French to my father. Then my father comes over and he says, we have to leave. We're not supposed to be hunting here. We're not welcome. I was mad. I was like, you made me give up my hunting spot to come here to hunt in this great hunting area for today. And we haven't even been here but 2 hours, and we got to leave, So we just washed it off, and there's been many cases like that in my past. That was one of the things that Chief Ernest did say to me. He said they've always known you, and they've always watched over you. They've always seen you. They know who you are. So I don't know if he meant everybody out there that goes out there. Quite possibly, I believe anything about deer or animals teaching, the females always teach all the younger animals everything. I've seen that in my backyard. The does will bring the babies in flag, to try to teach them what we are. Well, how about Hawken Hills? There's stories from over there where people were having, a birthday party or whatever, and all of a sudden they've got an interaction going, some throwing pine cones. Now, how do you know that isn't really what's going on is the fact that they are watching you on how you react, so they can teach their offspring, like, that's a knapsack, or that's a gun, or watch how I scare this one out of here. How do you know it's not at that level of thinking, particularly after they do communicate? And if they do communicate, they have their own language, then you're going right into where they're actually teaching and stuff. Do they migrate? Yeah, I believe they do. Maybe not real far. Let's just say 400 miles to substantiate those tracks. Because from what I've seen, they're following a simple pathway, and they take the high ground pretty much all the time, unless they're going down.
We've said it before. I think they're just following the food.
They follow the food, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They follow the seasons. As a matter of fact, the area that I was in,
just like the Native Americans used to.
Exactly. There's a guy in that area that I know that we've been waiting until the end of November to see if they come back through. It'll be 2 years in a row that they come back through in that certain area, and that does show that they're following the food source. As much as people want to say, well, no, they stay here, they stay there. No, I think that they go as further south as they can to where they're comfortable, and they don't have 15 feet of snow they have to walk through, because even the animals, the deer, don't do that. They'll yard up. So they're going to follow the deer or whatever else they have, the apples, food source to get. So that's pretty interesting all in itself. But one of these days, you're going to come across people that are actually going to make that connection, like Jane Goodall, and they're going to use that information, and they're going to take it seriously for once.
Oh yeah, I think, and I think we're not too far away from that, actually.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see that. I think we'll probably see that in our lifetime.
Ernie, maybe that could be you if you went back to that same spot and ran into your buddies again.
And shot him a deer this time.
Ernie, we appreciate you being here tonight, and we really loved your encounter,
man. That was a great encounter. Thank you.
I apprate it. Thank you very much.
All right, take care, man. It was great talking with you again.
Yeah, you take it easy.
Thank you.
All right,
yeah, you too. You have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Did you ever think that we would hear an encounter like that?
I don't know. I've never heard anybody describe anything like that.
Just amazing the way those things were trying to communicate with them, trying to get him to shoot a deer.
It's crazy.
It's a great encounter. Thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate all of you. With that, we'll wrap this up.
Yep.
Brian, thanks again, my friend.
Yeah, man, always fun.
We'll get out of here.
Yep. See ya.